Hey everyone, before we dive in, do me a quick favor. Smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you don't miss what happens next. This story gets wild, and you're definitely going to want the full tea. Ready? Let's jump in. Hey there, I'm Ava Reynolds. 12 years ago, my younger brother stared right at me and said, "You're nothing but an ugly, broken loser." Then he cracked up like it was the best joke in the world. Seconds later, my own dad grabbed my wrist, pushed me toward the front door, and growled, "I'm done with you carrying my last name." That night, I walked out into a brutal Colorado snowstorm with one suitcase and $800 in my pocket. No hugs goodbye, no take care, just the door clicking shut behind me. But 12 years later, I stepped back into that exact same city wearing a gown I designed and stitched myself, straight into my brother's wedding reception, and watched the entire room go dead silent the second they figured out who I was. What happened during those 12 years? How did the slow, embarrassing reject they tossed out end up holding the one card that could burn everything they'd built to the ground? If you want every juicy detail of how that night ended for them, and exactly how I made sure they'd never forget my name again, subscribe and turn on notifications right now. The full story drops in the next parts, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Here we go. 3 nights before high school graduation, I was ripping apart the hallway closet hunting for the folder with my cap and gown paperwork when I heard Dad's voice float out of his office. The door was cracked just enough. He always left it like that when he didn't want Mom barging in. He had the call on speaker. I knew the voice on the other end immediately. Mr. Barrett, the old money investor who still owned 22% of Reynolds Couture. Dad was using his smooth, buttery tone, the one he saved for people who signed the checks. "This is James Reynolds. Look, Barrett, Ava's dyslexia is way worse than we let on. Severe. She still stumbles over words when anyone's watching. And standing next to Ethan, she just doesn't look right in photos. We can't have the face of the brand attached to that. We'll take care of it quietly after she graduates. Clean cut." I stood there squeezing that folder so hard the cardboard crumpled. That's when I spotted Ethan lurking in the shadows outside the office, 13 years old, already taller than me, leaning against the wall like he owned the place. He'd heard everything. He locked eyes with me, smirked, and slowly mouthed so I could read his lips, "Ugly freak." Then he let out this quiet, nasty laugh like we were in on the same sick joke. Dad stepped out, shut the door, and finally saw me. His expression didn't even flicker. "You heard plenty," he said. "I'm not repeating myself. I don't want you using the Reynolds name anymore. You've got 1 hour. Pack and get out." Mom showed up at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe, eyes already red and puffy. Sarah Reynolds opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words ever came. When Barrett's money was involved, she just clutched the railing and stared at me like I was already a ghost. Ethan stayed put, arms folded, enjoying the show. I walked past him, he didn't budge. I had to twist sideways so my shoulder wouldn't touch him. Upstairs, I yanked out the beat-up black suitcase I'd had since 8th grade. Threw in jeans, sweatshirts, the 2 dresses I never wore, my ancient laptop, every dollar I'd scraped together babysitting. Zipped it, dragged it downstairs. The wheels echoed like gunshots through the whole house. Dad was waiting by the door. He'd already pulled my house key off his ring and left it on the entry table like garbage. I stepped outside. -22 degrees. Snow stabbed my face like tiny knives. I had on sneakers because I couldn't find my boots. The door closed behind me. Soft click, no dramatic slam. Just over. I was halfway down the driveway when my phone buzzed. Unknown Boulder number. Teeth chattering, I answered. "Ava, it's Grandma Rose. Do not get on a bus tonight. Drive straight to Boulder. Porch lights on, garage is open. Get here now." I didn't cry until I heard her voice. I turned around, climbed into the 10-year-old Outback Dad had bought me 2 years earlier, still titled in my name, and drove 40 minutes through the blizzard to Boulder. Wipers couldn't keep up. I kept waiting for the car to spin out and that to be the end. Grandma Rose was in the doorway when I pulled in, 81 years old, wrapped in her old robe, arms wide open. She didn't ask a single question. Just pulled me inside, sat me on the couch, wrapped me in the same crochet blanket she'd had since I was 5, and made hot chocolate like nothing had changed. I stayed exactly 3 days. On the fourth morning, Grandma Rose slid a mug of coffee across the table and pushed a fat roll of bills toward me. $800, she said. Everything I can give without James noticing. And before you argue, we're not doing this. You're not staying. I started to protest anyway. She lifted one hand and shut me down. Listen to me, Ava. The night he threw you out, James called me himself. Said if I ever took you in for good or opened my mouth publicly, he'd have me in a nursing home by sunrise, doctors, lawyers, the works. He still controls the trust one live on. One phone call in this house, my accounts, everything's gone. I'm 81. I'm not letting that man lock me up because I picked my granddaughter over his precious brand. Her voice never shook. She just stared me down. You staying here gives him the excuse he wants. So you're getting on that bus, and I'm wiring money every month from the account he doesn't know about. That's how we beat him. I swallowed hard and took the cash. 3 hours later, I was on a southbound Greyhound watching Boulder disappear. The first 6 years in Austin were brutal. Diner breakfast shifts, midnight food deliveries, scrubbing offices on Sundays. Some months I barely cleared $1,000 after rent. I kept a mason jar on the counter labeled Grandma. First Tuesday of every month, a plain envelope showed up, $300 to $500, and a single sheet of her handwriting. You're smarter than every last one of them. Keep going. That jar paid for speech therapy at the free clinic. Twice a week I sat with grad students until the stutter finally faded. By year 5, it only popped up when I was dead tired or raging. Design classes were one slow online semester at a time. I taught myself pattern making on a 10-year-old laptop propped on a cardboard box. My early sketches were trash. I printed them anyway and fixed them the next night. In 2018, I launched an Etsy shop under Reeves Studio. 3 wrap dresses made from dead stock denim, a cropped linen jacket, a silk scarf I dyed in my kitchen sink. 12 sales the first month. Grandma Rose bought the scarf, sent a photo of herself rocking it at the Boulder Farmers Market, grinning like she just pulled the ultimate prank. Orders climbed. I quit the cleaning jobs, then the diner. In 2021, a local investor handed me a $50,000 check after one coffee meeting. By 2023, we crossed 7 figures. I moved into a real apartment, hired seamstresses, leased an actual studio, switched to 100% sustainable fabrics. The brand had a name, offices, numbers most 30-year-old designers would kill for. But I kept the Reynolds connection buried deep. Grandma Rose's letters never stopped. The handwriting got shakier, the envelopes thinner, but the message stayed fierce. Last year, she started adding the same PS every time. When you're ready to go back, you tell me first. I want to be breathing when they see your face. I still have that original $800 roll rubber banded in a fireproof box with every letter she ever sent. By early 2025, I had 22 employees and revenue that would make Dad choke on his bourbon. I finally booked that flight back to Denver on my terms, in my clothes, with my name on everything. First week of April 2025, I got home to my East Austin apartment after a 14-hour day finishing the fall line. Studio lights off, just the fridge humming. Kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag, and saw it, a thick cream envelope with real gold borders slid under my door. The kind of invitation that screams old money and brand new power plays. I picked it up like it might bite me. Ethan Reynolds and Chloe Langford. Saturday, April 26th, 6 p.m. The Crawford Hotel, Denver, Colorado. Black tie requested. I stood in the dark hallway holding it forever. 12 years of silence folded into one fancy card. Flipped it over. No personal note, of course not. Just the RSVP card and a pre-addressed envelope to some wedding planner I'd never heard of. I carried it to the kitchen, stared at it while the kettle screamed, then opened my laptop and booked the earliest nonstop flight I could find. Out of Austin, back 2 days later. Paid extra for the exit row and didn't flinch. That night I FaceTimed Grandma Rose. Past 10 in Boulder, but she picked up on the second ring. Face thinner every month, oxygen tube barely noticeable. Hair still that stubborn red. I'm coming home for Ethan's wedding. I told her in Vietnamese, the language we switched to when things got real. She studied me for a few seconds, Then the corner of her mouth curled into the crooked grin I'd missed for 12 years. Then you walk in there like the queen you are, she rasped. Don't embarrass me in front of the ancestors. I actually laughed, first time in days. Never. She nodded once and hung up without goodbye. Classic grandma. I started packing that night. Not one single thing in that suitcase was from another label. The long white cashmere coat I cut and sewed myself last winter. The smoke gray silk blouse still on the dress form. The cream-tailored pants with hidden pockets. The boots I hand-dyed to match Rocky Mountain snow at sunset. Every piece designed, drafted, cut, and finished by me. I laid them out on the bed like battle armor, zipped the suitcase, and left it by the door for 2 weeks, like a promise. Morning of the flight, I wore the white coat open over a black turtleneck and jeans, hair lighter than anyone in Denver remembered. Huge sunglasses on even though the sun wasn't up. Checked the bag, breezed through security, slept the whole flight. When the plane banked over the front range, I finally opened my eyes. The mountains looked identical. I didn't. Landed at DIA just after noon. Grabbed my suitcase, rolled through the terminal, stepped outside into that crisp pine-in altitude air. Uber driver, 30s, Broncos cap. Loaded my bag and glanced at me in the mirror. Headed to a shoot or something. My wife would swear you're one of those fashion girls she's obsessed with. I smiled, small but real. Something like that. He cranked the radio and drove me toward the city I hadn't seen in 12 years. Saturday night, I stepped off the elevator onto the mezzanine of the Crawford Hotel and paused just long enough for the white silk gown to settle around my ankles. Bias cut, seamless, flowing like liquid, except for one tiny detail. The Reeve Studio logo hand embroidered in white thread over my heart. Practically invisible unless the light hit it exactly right. I walked down the grand staircase, every step on purpose, every breath steady. The security guy at the velvet rope took one look at the cut of the dress, the quiet confidence, and lifted the rope without a word. Gave me a respectful nod like I belonged on the VIP side. I almost laughed. 12 years ago, I wouldn't have been allowed to mop the floors in this place. The foyer was packed, crystal chandeliers, string quartet, champagne pyramids, money thick in the air. I glided through the crowd like I had an invitation engraved in gold instead of being the uninvited ghost I actually was. Ethan was center stage, arm around Chloe, both glowing under the photographer's flashes. He wore midnight blue velvet. She wore champagne satin that cost more than most people's rent. Perfect couple, perfect life. I walked straight up to them. Ethan saw me first. His arm dropped from Chloe's waist like it burned. His laugh died mid-breath. Face went slack. Eyes huge. Mouth actually hanging open. I stopped 2 feet away, close enough to see his pulse hammering in his throat. Congratulations on the big day, Ethan, I said softly. Just for you. 12 years already. Huh? Chloe turned, confused, perfect smile still plastered on. I'm sorry, do you two know each other? Ethan couldn't speak. Just stared like I was a nightmare in white silk. That's when Mom appeared, holding 2 champagne flutes, diamonds flashing on every finger. She saw me and the glasses slipped straight out of her hands, crashed onto the marble and exploded into 1,000 shards, champagne splashing over her silver heels. The sound cut through the room like a gunshot. Every head snapped toward us. Dad was right behind her. He froze mid-step. Color drained from his face so fast I thought he'd drop. Mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. I didn't move, just stood in the middle of the wreckage, white dress pristine, letting them stare. Mr. Langford, Chloe's dad, was 5 meters away, deep in conversation with 2 investors in custom suits. His eyes flicked over at the crash, landed on me, then dropped to the tiny embroidered logo on my chest. He narrowed his eyes, tilted his head, stepped closer, squinted. Recognition hit him like a brick. He mouthed, barely audible over the quartet, no freaking way. The music kept playing, but the bubble around us went dead silent. Chloe looked from Ethan to Mom to Dad, panic creeping into her perfect face. Ethan, what is going on? Ethan finally croaked my name, voice cracking like he was 13 again. Ava. I gave him the calmest, smallest smile I'd practiced in the mirror for months. In the flesh. Mom made a half sob, half gasp, reached out like she needed to touch me to prove I was real. Her hand froze midair, shaking. Dad took one step forward, then stopped like he'd walked into a wall. Mr. Langford pushed past his investors and came straight to me. Didn't glance at Ethan or Dad. Just stared at the logo, then up at my face. Reeves Studio, he said low. You're the Reynolds behind Reeves Studio. Not a question. I met his eyes and said nothing. The dress answered for me. Behind him, Dad finally rasped, Ava Howe. I ignored him, pulled my phone from the hidden pocket, typed one line to Grandma Rose. I'm in. Don't worry. Sent. Slipped it away, looked back at my frozen family, and let the silence stretch just long enough to taste it. 12 years of hustle. 12 years of silence. 12 years of becoming someone they never saw coming. And now they saw. That same night, 15 minutes after the champagne hit the floor, Chloe Langford excused herself with a tight little smile. Just need the ladies' room, she told Ethan, voice only shaking a little. She kissed his cheek, slipped through the crowd, and vanished down a side hallway toward the private elevators. She made it to the marble bathroom on the 15th floor, locked herself in the farthest stall, and opened her phone with trembling fingers. First, she searched the tiny embroidered logo she'd seen on my chest, Reeves Studio. Results loaded instantly. Reeves Studio, sustainable luxury fashion house, founded 2019, Austin-based. Founder and CEO Ava Reynolds. Current valuation, $680 million. 28% market share in the Western U.S. and climbing. Direct competitor to Langford Fast Fashion in every major category. Her breath hitched. She scrolled faster. Me on Forbes 30 Under 30. Me on the cover of Vogue Business. Me shaking hands with factory owners in Portugal. All organic fabrics. All ethical production. Numbers that made Langford's board sweat every quarter. A text popped up. Unknown number. One audio file and a PDF. The message read, thought you might want context. Jake Miller, my old high school friend, now a cutthroat corporate litigator in Denver, had been waiting for this night longer than I had. Chloe hit play. Dad's voice, crystal clear from 2013. Ava's dyslexia is severe. She stumbles when anyone's watching. We can't have the face of the brand tied to that. We'll handle it quietly after graduation. Clean cut. Then the PDF, the official disinheritance letter, signed, notarized, dated 1 week after I was thrown out. Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. At the exact same second, another message hit my phone. Jake again sent. I opened the files, added one line in the foreword to Chloe. Now you know why Ethan never mentions his sister, right? Sent. Watch the read receipt pop up. No reply. 2 floors below, the string quartet played on like nothing happened. Up here, everything had. I leaned against the cool hallway wall outside the restroom, white dress glowing under the sconce lights, and waited. 30 seconds later, the stall door banged open. Chloe stepped out, face white as paper, mascara streaked, phone gripped like a lifeline. She saw me and froze. I didn't move, just looked at her and let the silence finish the job. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You're her, she whispered. The one they said never existed. I gave the tiniest nod. Her eyes dropped to the Reeves Studio logo again, then back to my face. Realization slammed her a second time. Your company, my dad has been trying to buy or bury Reeves Studio for 2 years. He rants about that Austin upstart in every board meeting. He had no idea it was you. I still said nothing. Chloe looked like she might throw up. She backed up until her shoulders hit the mirror. Ethan never told me he had a sister, she said, voice cracking. Not once. I finally spoke, low, steady. Now you know why. She stared at the phone in her hand, at the audio file, at my name attached to everything her future father-in-law had tried to erase. I pushed off the wall, took one step closer. Tell Ethan the wedding can still happen, I said. Or not. That part's up to you now. Then I walked past her, heels silent on the carpet, pressed the elevator button. Before the doors opened, I called Grandma Rose. She picked up on the first ring. I kept it to 30 seconds flat. Everything's perfect. Sleep well, Grandma. She laughed, That rough, perfect laugh. Good night, baby girl. I hung up as the elevator arrived, stepped inside, and watched the doors close on Chloe Langford still frozen in the hallway, holding the truth in her shaking hands. Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. Mr. Langford strode into the Brown Palace ballroom, flanked by 2 publicists and 3 lawyers. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted before he even reached the podium. He didn't smile. Ladies and gentlemen, effective immediately, Langford Capital is terminating the $120 million strategic investment in Reynolds Couture. We have discovered material omissions regarding family risk and corporate governance that make continued partnership impossible. The room exploded. By 9:12, Reynolds Couture stock was down 28%. By 9:27, it was down 48%. Trading halted twice before lunch. CNBC ticker screamed REYN, 48.3% in screaming red. By 10:05, the bank swooped in. Armored trucks and security teams sealed the gates of the biggest factories. $180 million in defaulted loans triggered clauses Dad thought were long dead. Yellow tape went up. Machines stopped mid-stitch. Workers walked out with final paychecks. By 11:30, the first shareholder lawsuit hit Dad's desk. Class action, fraud, concealment of material family risk. 7 more landed before the markets closed. Ethan never made it to Aspen. He was at the private terminal at Centennial Airport, boarding pass in hand, honeymoon bags already loaded on the Gulfstream, when Chloe showed up in sunglasses and a trench coat. No makeup, no ring. She handed him the engagement ring in its little velvet pouch. I'm not getting on that plane. Ethan laughed at first, nervous, confused. Chloe, come on. Whatever she told you. She didn't tell me anything. Chloe cut in ice cold. She showed me. Your dad's own words. Your family's lies. My father just lost $120 million because of you people. We're done. She turned and walked away. The ring stayed in Ethan's hand. The pilots shut the door. He stood alone on the tarmac while the jet took off without him. Back in Cherry Creek, the house was a battlefield. Mom screaming at Dad through tears, hurling financial statements like grenades. You swore it was handled. You swore no one would ever know. Dad's face ashen. I paid lawyers. I paid everyone. Their voices carried out the open windows to the street. Neighbors pretended they couldn't hear. At 3:17 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. 2 divorce attorneys stepped out, one for Mom, one already retained by Dad. Papers served right on the marble kitchen island. Mom signed first. Dad didn't even read his. At 4:02 p.m., Dad locked himself in his study, poured 3 fingers of Macallan, and dialed the one number he swore he'd never use again. Grandma Rose picked up on the 4th ring. Rose, he started, voice breaking. Don't, she said, calm and final. Don't call here anymore. Click. He called back, straight to voicemail. Left 7 messages in 20 minutes. She never answered again. By 6 p.m., the news cycle had already moved on to the next corpse. And that, my friends, is just the beginning. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The rest of the story is coming, and it gets even better. See you in the next one.